musicales La Princesa de Asturias y La Infanta Doña Sofía.
Se declara abierto el acto de entrega de los
I
premios
declared open
Princesa de
the
Asturias
opening
2021.
session of the Princess of Asturias Awards 2021.
With your Majesty's leave, the Honourable Princess of Asturias Awards 2021 laureates will enter the theatre.
Premio Princesa de Asturias de los
Princess of
Deportes.
Asturias Award for Sports.
Accede por el escenario
Coming in on the stage is Teresa Perales from Spain.
Premio
Princess of Asturias Award for Literature. Emmanuel Carrère from France.
Premio
Princess of Asturias Award for the Arts.
Marina
Abramovic from Serbia. Princess of Asturias Award for International Cooperation, CAMFED, Campaign for Female Education, represented by its General Manager Lucy Lake from the United Kingdom, and the Executive Director from CAMFED Association, Fiona Mavinga from Zimbabwe. Princess of Asturias Award for Concord, José Andrés from Spain. And World Central Kitchen, represented by its General Manager, Nate Mook from the United States. Princess of Asturias Award for Communication and Humanities, Gloria Steinem from the United States. Princess of Asturias Award for Technical and Scientific Research. Katalin Karikó from Hungary. Drew Weissman from the United States. Philip Felgner from the United States. Ugur Sahin from Turkey. Özlem Türeci from Germany. Derek Rossi from Canada. Sarah Gilbert from the United Kingdom.
I give the floor to Don Luis Fernández Vega, President of the Princess of Asturias Foundation.
Majestades,
Your Majesties,
Altezas,
Your Highnesses,
excelentísimas e ilustrísimas
distinguished and illustrious authorities,
galardonados,
laureates,
señoras y señores.
ladies and gentlemen.
La Fundación Princesa de Asturias siente hoy al celebrar
The
esta
celebration
ceremonia
of this ceremony
una
here
inmensa
today
alegría.
brings immense joy to the
Volvemos
Princess of
a este
Asturias
teatro,
Foundation.
al Teatro Campoamor,
We return to this
que
theatre,
tanto
to the
significado
Campoamor
tiene
Theatre,
para todos
which
y
holds such
simboliza
significance
que
for
estamos
everyone in
consiguiendo
addition to
superar
symbolizing
los obstáculos
that we're
que
managing
la
to
pandemia
overcome the
ha
many
puesto en nuestro
obstacles
camino.
that the pandemic has put in our way.
Esta catástrofe mundial
This global catastrophe
desborda claramente los
clearly
límites de un
goes
problema
beyond the
sanitario,
limits
un
of our
problema
problem
sanitario,
of
y se
public
revela
health
como factor
and has
modulador
proven
de la vida de la
to
gente,
be a
por lo que
modulating
estamos
factor
entrando
in people's
en un mundo
lives,
nuevo, en una realidad nueva.
which means we are on the threshold
Todo ello
of a new
nos
world,
produce
a
una
new
gran
reality,
inquietud por la pérdida de
all of which
seguridades
greatly
que
concerns
teníamos
us
asumidas como
in
propias.
terms of the loss in
Pero al
safety
igual
that
que
we
otras
had taken for
epidemias
granted.
no impidieron el
Yet,
progreso de la humanidad,
just as other
esta
epidemics did not
no
impede the
detendrá
progress of
el deseo
humanity,
de conocer
this
y
one
investigar.
will not impede our desire
Por
to
eso,
know and
estar aquí
investigate.
esta tarde
For this
es una
reason,
prueba de que poco a poco
being here
intentamos
this evening
retomar
is
algunas de las
proof that
costumbres
little by
de nuestra vida
little
cotidiana.
we are seeking to
Podremos,
recover
sobre
some of the
todo,
customs of our
vivir
daily
sin tanta
life.
incertidumbre
We can,
como
above
la que
all,
protagonizamos
live life with
nuestras
less
vidas el
uncertainty
pasado año.
than that which has
Y podremos
featured
también
in our lives
abrirnos a quienes
since
acuden
last
hoy
year.
para rendir homenaje al talento
We can
creador,
also open up to those
a
who
la
come
obra
here today
trascendente
so
y
as to pay
sacrificada de
tribute
los
to creative
galardonados.
talent, to the momentous and
Personas que
selfless work of the
comparten con el
laureates.
filósofo Emilio
Personages
Lledó
who share with
la
the
idea
philosopher Emilio
de que
Lledó
la lucha por los
the idea
principios de
that the
verdad,
struggle for the
libertad,
principles of
belleza
truth,
y generosidad
freedom,
no
beauty,
termina
and
nunca,
generosity
pues son la
never
clave del
ends,
progreso y la
because such
convivencia en
principles
paz.
are the key to progress and
Asimismo,
peaceful
es muy
coexistence.
emotivo que estén aquí
It is
algunos de los
likewise very
premiados
poignant
que
that
el año
some of the
pasado
laureates
no
who
pudieron
were unable
asistir
to
a la
attend this
ceremonia
ceremony last year
y son una
are here
razón
with
más
us today.
para que los sintamos como
They
una gran
constitute yet
esperanza.
another reason to
Porque, como
feel that
decía
their being
Julio
able to do
Cortázar,
so
la esperanza
offers us
le
great
pertenece a
hope.
la vida.
For as
Es la
Julio
vida
Cortázar
misma
put it,
defendiéndose.
hope belongs to life.
Porque esta
It
palabra
is life
compendia
itself defending
la mayor
itself.
parte de la historia y los objetivos de la
Because this
fundación
word, hope,
desde su
has
nacimiento
encapsulated the
y
greater
continúa
part of the
alentando
Foundation's
nuestra tarea.
history and goals
Como afirmó
since
Su
its
Majestad el
inception
Rey
and never ceases to
hace unos
inspire
años.
our
Esa
efforts.
esperanza sigue
As His
viva
Majesty the
porque
King
nuestros
affirmed some
premios
years
son
ago,
hoy una realidad
that hope
mirada
lives
y
on
respetada
as
por
our
el mundo.
awards are today admired and
ahora,
respected throughout the
más
world.
que nunca,
Today,
los seguimos
more than ever,
necesitando como
we need
estímulo
them
e
as a
inspiración
stimulus
en
and
estos tiempos
inspiration
cruciales,
in these
tiempos
crucial,
intensos y de
intense
renovación.
times of
Pues bien,
renewal.
ese es el sentimiento que nos
And
ha impulsado
so,
hasta este
that
instante.
same hope is the
Nos ha
feeling that
ayudado
has
también a
served as the
trabajar
driving
con ánimo
force,
dispuesto
bringing us to this
todos estos
present
meses
moment. It has also helped us to enthusiastically carry out our work throughout all these months, in which we have championed realism and solidarity, the force of reflection and prudence, the vibrant ability to do things, and to actively forge ahead. It is admirable that in times of pandemics, crisis, disdain for the given word and the concealment of values, we can carry out a project as lofty as this. It is essential for us to pay tribute to our laureates. We firmly believe that in doing so, we help place the spotlight on all that is the seed of the best of humanity. This ceremony is also the symbol and the reflection of the deep and indisputable feelings that bind Asturias to the crown. Bonds that have been put to the test so many times throughout history and which demonstrate both our constitutional loyalty and the Principality's commitment to Spain. For all these reasons, and bolstered by the affection and support of the people of Asturias, it is a true honor to once more welcome Their Majesties, the King and Queen, and the Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Asturias and Infanta Sofia of Spain to our land. Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I especially wish to express our gratitude to our Honorary President, the Princess of Asturias, who is here today to once again show her affection for the Principality and her admiration and respect for our laureates' work. You may rest assured that you will never find wanting our commitment to a Spain in which equality, freedom and justice triumph. I would also like to express heartfelt appreciation to Her Majesty Queen Sofia, who honors us with her presence and who has given us abundant proof of her affection for our foundation on so many occasions. We likewise wish to express our thanks for the help of so many people, without whose support this celebration of intelligence and creative effort would not be possible. In particular, I would like to thank our trustees and patrons for the generosity and advice, which has been especially valuable throughout these months. The members of the different juries for the responsible and intelligent work, the media, the Foundation's outstanding team, and above all, the people of Asturias, and so many other Spaniards who support us. Life, which always ends up finding its way, sometimes provides us with possibilities like the ones we are relishing here this evening. The first is to allow ourselves to be aware that continuing to forge ahead is worth the effort, and that should we do so, something will change for the better in some corner of the world. We're sure that by sharing knowledge, experience, certainties and doubts, just as our laureates do, our journey forward will endure and be fortified more than ever. And on that journey, we will combine our work with that of our society that sees in the laureates the talent, the effort and sense of solidarity that unites us in the face of discord, that joins more than divides, and that fully conscious of its solid values does not give up in the face of difficulties. Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, ladies and gentlemen, today we have also fulfilled the brilliant thought that there is nothing more powerful than that of an idea whose time has come. These are our aspirations, our dreams, as they are our goals, to praise the finest, honor them, and in doing so, finding them in the work and their achievements, inspiration to achieve excellence for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Tiene la palabra el señor Emmanuel Carrère.
Now I give the floor to Emmanuel Carrère, Prince of Asturias Award for Literature.
Votre Majesté, Vos Altesses,
Your Majesties, Your Highnesses,
membres de la Fondation,
members of the Foundation, ladies and gentlemen,
chers amis,
dear friends,
c'est un très grand honneur que vous me faites en m'accordant ce prix. Et un honneur d'autant
granting me
plus
this
grand que
award
c'est un honneur espagnol.
constitutes a
J'aimerais
true
parler
honor,
et lire l'espagnol.
and this is a Spanish
Malheureusement, je ne le parle
honor, and I
pas.
would like to read in Spanish,
En
but
revanche,
I don't speak it or read it. However, I just look at my library, which is classified by languages, just as any other classification, and we all know that none is totally satisfactory. By alphabetical order, genre, century, publisher, affinities, whatever. By language has its advantages. In any case, I noticed that in the top 3 on the list of books on the shelves, Spanish comes right behind English and ahead of Russian. Approaching those shelves is to say hello to old friends. A grandfather younger than the old young folk, Cervantes, 2 ironic and enigmatic uncles, Borges and Bioy Casares, Cortázar, in whose building I lived for 10 years, on a street in the 10th district of Paris, once a working-class neighborhood, but has not nowadays become gentrified. Roberto Bolaño, the elder brother everyone dreams of, adventurous and charming, like Robert Louis Stevenson, and also some fellow travelers, more or less my age, Enrique Villamatas, Javier Cercas, Juan Gabriel Vázquez, and my dear cousin, Rosa Montero. I wish to express my gratitude to the authors who forged me, but also to the publishers who have published my work. The fact that my books have little by little managed to win over readers in Spain, that I appear before you here this evening, it is all largely thanks to the patient and faithful work of Anagrama Publishing House. Of Anagrama, which is to say of our great and beloved Jorge Herralde. And to say Herralde is also to say Lali Gubern. And to say Anagrama today also says Silvia Sese. And it is also thanks to the faithful and subtle work of Jaime Zulaika, who has been my translator for many years now. There is a cruel absence here this evening, that of Paul Ochakowski-Logan, my friend and French publisher for 35 years, who died 3 years ago. No one can replace him, but Emmeline Landon is here, who is not only his widow, but also a wonderful painter and writer, as well as my best friend. The Paul Publishing House carries on and does so admirably, headed by Jean-Paul Hirsch, who has kindly attended this event together with his wife Hasing and has François Samuelson, my long-time agent. My thanks to all 3 of them. Finally, I would like to thank Shaline Bourgeois-Taquet for being the woman she is, for directing the film she directs, and for sharing life with me. There you have it. I wrote this short speech that I had read, as they say, going through the motions, and I sent it to the Princess of Asturias Foundation to be translated and in time for the ceremony. But a few days later, I received an email from the foundation that was actually a masterpiece of tact. They told me that my brief speech was wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and my list of thanks totally justified. That was totally in keeping with a similar circumstance, but that precisely in this present circumstance, how to phrase it, somewhat more was expected of me, something, and I cite the English term used, slightly more inspirational. I don't know what the exact interpretation of this adjective would be, slightly more inspiring, slightly more inspired, a little in both. In any case, what was to be inferred from this tremendously tactful message is that, believing that I had done the appropriate thing, in the same way that one follows dress code, I had written a suitable, one might even say conventional speech, a reproach that I sincerely have not often received. But I did not wish to relinquish my list of thanks, because the people I have thanked are really dear to me. But I have tried to round it off with something slightly more inspiring. And I have not needed to cast my gaze very far. I have not needed to search very far, because at this very moment I'm dealing with something extremely, one might even say tragically inspiring, about which I would like to say a few words. On September the 8th last, the trial began in Paris for the attacks on the street cafes and in the Bataclan concert hall that also took place in Paris on 13th November 2015. Those attacks resulted in 131 deaths. You Spaniards had cause to weep even more on March the 11th, 2004, when there were 61 more deaths. If this atrocious accounting makes any sense at all. For us, they were the most lethal attacks ever perpetrated on French soil. The murderers were killed or blew themselves up. The 14 scoundrels in the dock are what in French we call second coteaux, secondary figures, which invalidates the comparison that is often made with the Nuremberg trials, where very high-ranking Nazi dignitaries were tried. But what the Paris trial has in common with the Nuremberg trials is its historical ambition, its enormous resources, and first and foremost its duration, 9 months. I decided to follow this trial and in its entirety, from start to finish, every day. Something interesting does not happen every day, of course, but it is impossible to know in advance whether it will or not. Sometimes sessions that everyone expects to be exciting are extremely boring, while others, of which nothing was expected, are exciting, such as the testimony of forensic doctors and ballistic experts. It is a maxim that all court journalists are familiar with, and that has practically no exception. If you are not there, something will happen. Therefore, Your Majesty, Your Highnesses, dear friends, however great the honor of being here tonight may be for me, a part of me continues in the Paris courtroom. Everyone who has followed a major trial knows that it is one of the most addictive experiences to be found. What this trial seeks to do is inordinate. It aspires to reveal everything that happened during those terrible hours from all angles. From the point of view of all those involved, going back as far as possible in the genealogy of events, the anatomy of a moment, to quote the title of Javier Cerca's forceful chronicle. This trial is also extraordinarily testing. Day after day, we wade through blood, in physical and moral wounds, heinous deaths, and lives cut short. It is a bloodbath of horror, and we sometimes wonder why we inflict it on ourselves. We inflict it on ourselves because it is not just a bloodbath of horror, because the testimonies that are given week after week at the rate of around 15 per day are often extraordinary examples of humanity. Those survivors, wounded in body and soul, are still standing. They speak to us from far off, from places of human experience that most of us do not know. Man, wrote Leon Bloy, has places in his poor heart that do not exist yet, and into them enters suffering, in order that they may have existence. Well, this trial also serves this purpose, to collectively explore these confines of our heart. Throughout these testimonies, we discover something else surprising. Stories of shipwrecks, of catastrophes, of the generalization of every man for himself usually reveal the worst in human beings. Cowardice, the law of the jungle, cannibalism. There is none of that there. It is impossible to imagine that a collective fiction of nobility and greatness of mind has been constructed. And yet, we have practically heard nothing but acts of mutual help, solidarity, gestures that are often heroic. Many blame themselves for trampling others while trying to flee. None of those trodden underfoot reproaches others for doing so. Everyone tried to protect the man or woman they loved, but some did something else. They risked their lives to protect strangers. I will end this speech, which has now become too long, with two quotes. The first one is from Simone Weil. Imaginary evil is romantic and varied. Real evil, however, is gloomy, monotonous, barren, boring. Imaginary good is boring. Real good is always new, marvelous, intoxicating. Therefore, imaginative literature is either boring or immoral or a mixture of both. It only escapes from this alternative if, in some way, it passes over to the side of reality through the power of art, and only genius can do that. The second is from a Bataclan survivor. I quote, "A few days after the attack, my father died. And just before he died, he told me, 'You and I console others for the misfortunes that happen to us. I myself would have preferred not to have to console you.'" Thank you, Majesties, Your Highnesses, dear friends. Thank you.
Tiene la palabra la señora Gloria Steinem, Premio Princesa de Asturias de Comunicación y Humanidades.
Thank you for the greatest adventure of my very, very long life. It's such a pleasure to be with you on this adventure in Spain. I'm also honored and amazed by the company of this award in the past, from Susan Sontag to Nelson Mandela, from Margaret Atwood to Doris Lessing, all writers and all revolutionaries. First, I have to thank Socorro Suarez Lafuente, who nominated me, and the jury for accepting that nomination, and the royal family and the Princess of Asturias Foundation for the generous honor. This is the first time I have received an award that bears a woman's name. I can take this off, right? Okay. When asked to describe myself, I say writer and organizer. I suppose what those two occupations have in common is the lack of an employer. They are not jobs, and they also lack economic security. On the other hand, it's also true that no one can fire you. I have to say that this is a great reward for insecurity. For the past year and more of this global pandemic, you and I, in our distant parts of the world, have felt very connected, if only for fearful reasons. No national border or difference in culture could completely contain a health danger that truly was global. It threatened us all, despite the economic and healthcare resources that created crucial differences in how we were and could be treated. In fact, there is no such thing as immigrants, since we are all passengers on spaceship Earth. Altogether, national boundaries began to seem way more artificial, and the ability to stay at home came to seem way more precious and life-saving. We also treasured hospital and healthcare workers as never before, and even some prisons were emptied without the once promised increase in crime. We have learned from this past year, and I hope we think about and treasure the lessons we have learned. For instance, in my country, more men were at home and came to know their own children, which was a good thing. And also, they were engaging in full-time childcare. They also came to see how daily and organic the process of education could be. This often freed people from the prisons of gender roles that are actually rather new in the history of humankind. In our origins as a migratory species, it often meant everyone caring for children. Patriarchy grew with becoming stationary. On the other hand, domestic violence against women sometimes increased in this locked-up year, and this was a lesson in tragedy. And both the national and popular definitions of who were and were not essential workers changed. First responders and grocery store clerks tended to beat out bankers and captains of industry. How amazing is that? So I hope in both our countries we take some time to examine these massive and deep lessons and think about what changed, what we want to keep, and what we want to abandon. For instance, in my own country, the changes beneath the pandemic became more visible. The racism that has always been with us in North America ever since European invaders imposed themselves on native populations, killing through disease and wars 90% of the people who lived there, and then also importing enslaved people. That has reached a tilting point in both negative and positive ways. The third of the country that values whiteness and that elected Donald Trump, perhaps the least qualified and most divisive president in US history, made political what had long been personal. It even caused a group of white men to try to take over the Capitol, as you probably saw on television. Yet because this time, contrary to rock lyrics, the revolution was televised, the racial and gender views that restricted this so-called revolution to a minority also caused the biggest outcry in history. It came from many men and most women and helped to make Black Lives Matter a majority movement. I hope that we will each bring our lessons with us and have more and deeper talking circles about what we have learned in this time of pandemic and emergency. What do we treasure? What do we want to keep? And what do we wish to change? What I thought about most often in this past year was the prophecy of Native people of the Cherokee Nation. They who were, of course, the residents of North America before Europeans arrived and occupied, and also killed 90% of the occupants with diseases to which they had no immunity. Their prophecy was this: the earth, which is a living being, will sense that its oxygen-producing forests are being destroyed, its oceans and atmosphere are becoming too warm and deprived of oxygen by burning fossil fuels, and its people too divided by the accident of being born with more or less melanin in our skin. And so this living earth, as it is through space, will simply shrug us off and start over. I have to say, this was something of a comfort. Yet now that I have seen my own city of New York come back on the streets, thousands, but not only of young women marching and a great rebellion, I also notice more laughter. And I would like to say that laughter is the one free emotion. It is the only one that cannot be compelled. You certainly can make someone afraid. You can even make someone believe they are in love if they are kept separate and dependent for long enough. Even in kidnappings, the so-called Stockholm Syndrome has become the name of the phenomenon of captives beginning to identify with the captor. But you cannot force someone to laugh, really and sincerely laugh. That's why it is a proof of freedom. In my home country, Native Americans recognized this by creating a god of laughter, neither male nor female, sometimes portrayed as a coyote, sometimes as the god of spontaneity, but always unpredictable. And what I have learned from this and noticed to be true in practice is laughter is a proof of freedom. I have learned to think twice about any meeting, including religious meetings, in which we are not allowed to laugh. I have learned to also from authoritarian figures like Hitler and Stalin, who seemed most afraid of and punishing of being laughed at. Indeed, among Hitler's first official acts after being elected, and he was elected, were to padlock the family planning clinics and declare a crime against the state, laughter, a crime against the state. What he feared most was being laughed at. And incidentally, so did Donald Trump. By treasuring such freedoms as laughter in the moments, we will preserve freedom forevermore. And I am so grateful to the symbol of freedom that this country provides, that each of you provides, and that I am so, so honored to be a part of. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Teresa Perales, Princess of Asturias Award for Sport.
Your Majesties, Highnesses, award winners, ladies and gentlemen, who would have said in 1995 when I heard the words, "You are never going to walk again," that the path I would travel along would bring me here today? Of course, not the neighbor who stopped my mother and me on the street when I finally decided to overcome my fears and shame to accept what was happening to me and go back out in public. No, she was never going to tell me that. Most likely with the best intentions in the world, she turned to my mother and said, as if I didn't exist, "Poor little girl, what happened to her?" In just a second and a glance, I had stopped being the girl from the third floor and become CB's poor little daughter. Of course, that neighbor wasn't going to tell me. For her, my life was over before it had even started. For us, life simply continued along a path different than the one planned. My mother, Sevi, was always sure that I had a certain destination to reach, that I was not going to always remain under the protection of her wing. She has always been by my side. "Mom, I want to swim in the pool." And she rushed right out to buy a life jacket and then literally threw me into the pool and jumped in herself. Who could have told me that I would still be swimming 24 years later and that I was going to win 27 Paralympic medals? Not even my coach could have imagined it, I'm sure, when he told me I was a diamond in the rough that simply needed polishing. I never knew whether my mother doubted it or if she even imagined it, because she never told me, "You cannot, you shouldn't, don't persist, you won't manage to do it." "Mom, I'm going to be a member of parliament." And she said, "Well, if that's what you want, do it." "Mom, I'm going to write a book." And she said, "If it makes you happy, go ahead." And so with all the projects over these years, even the craziest ones to do with a chair stuck to your backside. For instance, "Mom, I'm going to go to the Sahara Desert to take the Sahrawis cans of sardines in a four-wheel drive truck." And she said, "Well, let's come up with something so you can go to the toilet in the dunes." Who could also have told us how much society has changed? In the case of disability, what's more for the better? The way my neighbor looks at me is probably not the same anymore. Or rather, the way so many neighbors look at me is no longer the same. There are more accessible entrances, fewer shops with steps at the door, even a law on dependency. We undoubtedly have to continue to do better, and it's clear that we will still not, still not an ideal society, but now at least we realize it, and there are many, though not all, of us who strive to make things better and to move forward towards achieving equality for all people. For this reason, I'd like to take advantage of this podium to tell children and those who are not so young that we must not wait for someone to tell us what is going to happen or what we should do. You have to plan for it or dream about it yourself, decide what you want to do and go for it with determination, without letting obstacles prevent you from at least trying. And along the way, surround ourselves with people, friends, those who always tell you, like my mother, "I am here for you." So even if the destination is different from the one you imagined, the journey will have been worth it. Thank you very much.
Con la venia, Majestades.
With the permission of the Majesties, Highnesses, distinguished authorities, ladies and gentlemen. The jury in charge of granting the Princess of Asturias Awards 2021, made up of 175 experts, held their telematic meetings throughout the last months of May and June. And after studying 299 candidates from 57 nationalities, and with the support of more than 10,300 people and institutions from all over the world, they have granted the following awards. Princess of Asturias Award for Sports, for being an extraordinary sportswoman and an icon of the international Paralympic movement that has racked up an amazing track record equivalent to its profound, active and proud social commitment. And recognizing with this prize the effort of the whole group, the jury has granted the prize to Teresa Perales. Princess of Asturias Awards for Literature, for a very personalized work that generates a new space of expression which eliminates the frontiers between reality and fiction. And because with this, she manages to show the human condition and to analyze reality without mercy, showing a great influence in contemporary literature, the jury has awarded the prize to Emmanuel Carrère. Princess of Asturias Award for the Arts, for having included in performance sensorial and spiritual components that were not known beforehand, and having based her work on experimentation and the search of original languages, and for her courage in handing herself over to art fully, and for being at the forefront. And this has made her one of the most exciting artists of our time. The jury has awarded the prize to Marina Abramovic. Princess of Asturias Award for International Cooperation, for promoting the education of millions of girls and access to the control of resources and the protagonism of young women, and for fostering, thanks to the intergenerational help and solidarity, the change towards social justice and female leadership in sub-Saharan Africa, always with criteria of sustainability. The jury has granted the award to CAMFED, Campaign for Female Education. Lucy Lake, General Manager, will come up, and Fiona Mavinga, Executive Director of CAMFED Association, will come up for the award. Princess of Asturias Award for Concord, because he's focused his successful track record as a chef in humanitarian aid for the most underprivileged in extreme situations, and for its capacity to create an organization that responds with speed and efficacy to food and social emergencies in search of a more just and fair society and sustainable society. The jury has granted the prize to José Andrés and World Central Kitchen, and José Andrés and Nate Mook, General Manager of the World Central Kitchen, will come up for the prize. Princess of Asturias Award for Communication and Humanities, for being a benchmark of the movement for women's rights, and because her independence, her commitment towards feminism, and her will to include all voices have been an engine of one of the big revolutions of contemporary society. The jury has awarded the prize to Gloria Steinem. Princess of Asturias Award for Scientific and Technical Research, because they are the protagonists of one of the most outstanding achievements in the history of science, the obtaining in a very short period of time of effective vaccines against COVID-19, and because their long track records in research have led to innovative applications and constitute a wonderful, excellent example of the importance of basic science for the protection of health on a global scale. The jury has awarded the prize to Katalin Carico, Drew Weissman, Philip Feldner, Ugur Sahin, Eslem Turecci, Derek Rossi, and Sarah Gilbert.
I now give the floor to José Andrés, Princess of Asturias Award for Concord. The truth is that with a little bit of cider, this would be easier. Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, my fellow laureates, judges, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm going to echo the words of our laureate, our friend Emmanuel from France, and I was not going to do it, but I have to do it, because the little things that I've done in life has been thanks to Patricia, my wife. She's here with us, and I owe a lot to her. Thank you. I love you a lot, Patricia. This is yours and mine, as well as mine. I thank you for this prestigious recognition, which is not just for me. This award is shared with the women and the men of World Central Kitchen, who feed the hungry and uplift communities through the power of food. Right now, they are working tirelessly as we speak in different parts of the world. In September, I was with World Central Kitchen in La Palma when the island was devastated by the volcano. At the airport in Washington, D.C., serving welcoming meals to Afghan refugees. In New Orleans, as a Category 4 hurricane left millions without power and many families without homes. And in Haiti itself, where World Central Kitchen opened its first projects more than 11 years ago, where I returned in August after another catastrophic earthquake as well. Within days, in World Central Kitchen, we were delivering tens of thousands of meals from the cities to remote mountain villages. The people of the world, the people who are voiceless and faceless, those who seem like shadows in the fog, they need people who care for them. They need people who treat them as people. These people do not want our pity. They want our respect and overall their dignity. This is the power of a plate of food. My journey with World Central Kitchen didn't start in Haiti. It began right here in Asturias. My parents were nurses, and like so many of the heroes saving lives during the pandemic, I saw them going beyond the call of duty to take care of others. Always, as I grew up, I knew that while other professions could do the same, but I understood that cooks like me, who give food to the few, we feed the few.
Cuando abrí mi primer restaurante en Washington, casi hace ya 30 años, conocí a alguien que tenía
almost 30 years ago, when I opened my first restaurant in Washington, had the same sensitivity, the same spirit. Robert Egger. He was working at the time in the basement of a city's homeless shelter. Robert knew that wasting food was wrong, and wasting lives was even worse. He recycled the city's surplus food and trained the homeless to feed thousands of other homeless people all over Washington, D.C. As a volunteer there, I realized that people don't want our pity. They want our respect. Robert then told me something I remember every day. Too often, charity is about the redemption of the giver and not what it should be, which is the liberation of the receiver. What I learned in Washington and Haiti was put to the test when the catastrophe called Hurricane Maria moved slowly across Puerto Rico in the year 2017, with plenty of destruction around. When I went to Puerto Rico, I was not only intending to help America, but helping the country of my birth, too. The island shares both countries' history, And at the same time, it has forged its own identity and culture, the Boricua identity. So I arrived on one of the first planes that landed in San Juan after the hurricane, along with my good friend and now CEO at World Central Kitchen, Nate Mook. We had no idea that this moment could change and would change our lives. And in many ways, the work of World Central Kitchen forever. We gathered a group of 10 friends, many of them cooks, in the restaurant of my friend Jose Enrique. We gathered through WhatsApp. We met and we made sandwiches and sancocho soup. We grew up from 10 friends to more than 25,000 volunteers to give food to those who needed it. From one kitchen where it was covered with water because of the problems in the ceiling, the leaks. 28 kitchens then, from 1,000 meals to more than 150,000 meals a day. In total, we made more than 4 million meals. When we were told that this was impossible, we said, we don't know, but plate by plate, we will try to reach as much as we can. Since then, we've responded to hurricanes, tsunamis, wildfires, earthquakes, volcanoes, and during the pandemic as well, delivering more than 60 million meals. One plate at a time, we can find solutions to big problems. This is the mindset of many immigrants. I am proud of being Asturian, Catalan, Spaniard, and American, all these things. I feel like an immigrant of the world. Immigrants build bridges because we have to do it. We understand that the world needs bigger, longer tables where food can bring us together and not higher walls to keep us apart. The challenges that we face today are not insignificant. Hunger in our own communities, a changing climate leading to bigger disasters, increasing numbers of refugees, and a global pandemic that has collapsed economies. But I truly believe that there is a better path ahead for the world if we understand and we embrace the power of food. We should save the environment and eliminate hunger. If we stop wasting 40% of the food that we produce, we must improve health and save money. If we provide our children and seniors nourishing meals every day, we can bring stability and peace to regions of the world, but only if we first make sure that families can eat, that they have food at the table. In 1826, the great thinker and writer from France, Brillat Savarin, wrote that the future of nations depends on how they feed themselves. And he was right. Our future lies in feeding the world better. A world where food is the solution and not the problem. I am honored, along with World Central Kitchen, to receive the Princess of Asturias Award for Concord. But this does not mean that we can or will slow down. There is too much hunger around us, and there's a lot of work to do. Even as we are here today, my heart, as your heart, I'm sure, is with the people of La Palma, who must not be forgotten right now. Let us feed the world with hope. Let us build longer tables. Thank you. Now I give the floor of Kathleen Caricó, Princess of Asturias Award for Scientific and Technical Research.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, dear jury, fellow laureates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to receive the Princess of Asturias Award in such an incredible company. We appreciate this prize because it shed light on the importance of scientific research. We spent years working on the technologies that seemed unconventional and almost science fiction for many. But we shared the immense belief that if the result of our work could improve the life at least one person, then we succeeded. It is such a relief to know that by now the vaccine successfully protected millions of lives from the serious effect of COVID-19. Working at the bench in the laboratory, I only dreamed of having such an impact. We are grateful to the Princess Asturias Award, but we are just representatives of the hundreds of other scientists who, over the last few decades, helped build foundation for our work. The path of scientific discoveries is never a straight line. It has twists and turns at every juncture and requires international collaboration, collaborative effort, and contribution from many, many scientists. But it is important to keep asking questions and stay curious. Leonardo da Vinci claimed that experiments never err. Our expectations do. We are not deterred by failure, but instead used to push us to think critically. We also stand here today grateful to all of the frontline healthcare workers. It is not lost upon us the incredible risk that they were willing to take to save lives, some giving the ultimate sacrifice to help others. They inspired us to work harder and spring to action to make life-saving vaccines. The possibilities for the technologies are endless. We are already exploring ways to prevent HIV, malaria, cancer, to reduce many other diseases. We know that the patients are waiting. Thank you again for this incredible award. Our hope now is to inspire the next generation of scientists, doctors, and medical workers. We say stay curious, ask questions, and stay on track, no matter how winding that road might be. I am honored to receive the Princess Asturias Distinguished Prize together with my fellow scientists. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Asturias.
Majestades,
Your Majesties, authorities,
patronos, señoras y señores.
patrons, ladies and gentlemen, dear laureates, I am delighted to return to Oviedo to celebrate the presentation of our awards. I have always seen my parents acknowledge on this stage a job well done and the initiatives and ideas that make societies better. That is why I believe that once again this year, we should always remember that our laureates are essential guides for us all. This ever so connected world in which we live, allows all of us to become better acquainted with the work of those receiving our awards here today. Likewise, in my case, as a pre-university student, I think of all the young people for whom this will be the case and how much we can all learn from you.
It's truly an honor to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Os felicito a todos y os admiro.
I congratulate you all and admire you. Gloria Steinem for her committed defense of women's rights. Marina Abramovich for her extraordinary talent and for the emotions she incites in her audience. Camfed for its crucial work in educating so many women and girls who endure discrimination or violence. Amartya Sen, who dedicates his intelligence to seeking solutions to social inequalities. Emmanuel Carrère for enabling us to feel and for helping us understand the world. Teresa Perales for her strength, determination and perseverance. The COVID-19 vaccine researchers who have shown that science brings safety and progress, and José Andrés and his World Central Kitchen for feeding those in need. Discovering you through your work and lives is something that has inspired me all the more to receive instruction and to study. You project onto us, on the youngest members of society, the certainty that we also have a lot to contribute, that we can be important and show that we are responsible to be able to imagine a more sustainable, fairer, better future for us all. Studying and observing your work, dear laureates, is truly inspiring and gives me strength to continue to shoulder my responsibilities and always act with great commitment. My thanks to all of you who make it possible for us to be here today. Thank you to those who support the Foundation and foster the idea that culture, science and solidarity are crucial for our lives in common. I will soon return to my studies with the memory of a new awards ceremony that once again inspires and moves us. Moreover, I will miss this land, Asturias, which I love so dearly, and where my sister Sofia and I always feel at home. Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, Vice President of the Spanish government, Speaker of the Spanish Parliament, President of the Regional Government of the Principality of Asturias, Ministers, Speaker of the Regional Parliament of the Principality of Asturias, Delegate of the Central Government in Asturias, Mayor of Oviedo, President of the Princess of Asturias Foundation, authorities, trustees, and members of the juries, dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen. When we presented our awards last year, Spain was facing difficult circumstances, subjected, as I stated at the time, to tremendous, extreme pressure and tension. The global pandemic forced us to change the way we behave and our attitudes, altering and also transforming our way of life, the way we work,
nuestra manera de relacionarnos.
and even the way we interact with each
Una
other.
nueva y gran incertidumbre se sumaba
A great
y se
new uncertainty
superponía
was
a
added
las ya numerosas
to and
que tenemos que
overlaid the
confrontar a
already
diario.
numerous uncertainties that we nowadays
Pero al
have to
mismo
confront
tiempo,
on a daily
a
basis.
pesar de esas
Yet,
circunstancias,
at the same time,
conocimos
despite these
comportamientos personales
circumstances,
llenos de
we
responsabilidad
witnessed
y
examples
de
of personal
solidaridad.
conduct replete with
Y también
responsibility and
fuimos testigos
solidarity.
de compromisos
And we also
colectivos,
witnessed joint
llenos de
commitments
emoción y
brimming
de
with
esperanza.
emotion and with hope.
Compromisos que nos han acercado a
Commitments
tantas
that have
personas
brought
que han
us
sufrido de forma
closer
tan
to
triste y
so many
dolorosa
people
la
who have
enfermedad,
suffered the
y
disease
sobre todo
in such a sad
las
and
víctimas,
painful way, and above all,
cuyo recuerdo
brought us
siempre
closer to the victims,
permanecerá entre nosotros.
whose memory shall remain with us always.
Como nos recordaron los profesionales sanitarios al recoger su premio
As the health
el año
workers
pasado,
reminded us when they collected their
fueron
award
la
last year,
dedicación, la
it was
unión,
the dedication,
la colaboración y
union,
la ayuda de
collaboration,
muchas
and
personas
help
lo que
of
se
the
puso en
many
valor
that
a lo
gained
largo de
the
esos meses.
importance over those months.
Y encontraron en las miradas de los otros, de todos,
And they found in the gazes of the
fuerza y el
others, of
coraje para
everyone,
seguir
the
adelante.
strength and the courage to carry on.
Hoy nuestras miradas,
Today,
como ha recordado José Andrés,
our gaze, as José Andrés has reminded us, tends to the Canary Island of La Palma.
me gustaría tener un recuerdo muy especial.
I would like to send
Necesario,
very special
pero sobre todo
thoughts,
muy sentido,
so necessary but above all so very heartfelt
para
and
todos los que allí
affectionate,
viven, que
to
sufren
those who
desde
live
hace un
there.
mes la tremenda erupción
They have now
volcánica
been enduring
y que han visto
a
golpeadas
tremendous
sus vidas
volcanic
de una
eruption
manera
for a
tan
month.
dramática,
Their
con
lives
tanta
have
impotencia
been
como
so
tristeza.
helplessly, dramatically, and sadly turned upside down.
Muchos de ellos lo han perdido
Many
todo.
of them have lost everything,
Sus casas,
their
sus tierras y
homes, their
cultivos,
land and crops,
sus animales, sus recuerdos.
their animals, their memories.
Desde aquí les transmitimos nuestra solidaridad.
From here,
que es
we
la de toda
convey
España,
to them our
el
solidarity,
mayor ánimo para
which is that
afrontar
of Spain
esta
as a
situación.
whole, and a great deal of encouragement in
pedido
facing up to this
Que
situation.
no les olvidemos.
They have asked us
Y junto
not
a
to
todos
forget
los
them,
españoles,
and together with all Spaniards,
No
that
les
will be the
olvidemos.
case. We shall not forget them.
Me gustaría ahora dirigirme a nuestros
I would
premiados
like now to address the
de
laureates
esta 41
of this
edición,
41st
para
edition
expresarles sobre todo
of our awards
nuestro
in order
agradecimiento
to express our
y
gratitude
nuestra enhorabuena.
and above all our
Este
congratulations.
año, el Premio de las Artes ha recaído en la artista
This year, award
Marina
for the
Abramovic,
arts has been conferred
destacada
on
representante
the
del
Serbian
arte
artist
de la
Marina
performance,
Abramovic,
del que es pionera.
an outstanding representative
Ella
of
ayudó a
performance
abrir el
art,
camino a otros
of which she is a
artistas,
pioneer.
popularizando
She
y
helped
acercando
lead
al
the
gran
way
público
for other
esta
artists,
disciplina.
popularizing and making the discipline
Trayectoria
better
es
known to the public
esencial
at
en la
large.
transformación
Her
y
career
la
constitutes
vanguardia
an
del siglo XX,
essential
la ha
part of the
convertido
transformation
en una
and
creadora
avant-garde of the 20th
excepcional.
century and has made her
En su
an
obra se
exceptional
aunan
creator.
la sorpresa,
Her work combines
la
surprise
intensidad,
and
la emoción,
intensity,
la espontaneidad,
emotion
la
and
reflexión y la
spontaneity,
duda,
reflection
la
and
belleza y
doubt,
el dolor,
beauty
el arte
and
y
pain.
la vida.
In short, art and life.
Y ante ella, el espectador se siente profundamente
Viewers of her
implicado
performances
en
find
esas
themselves
formas
deeply
expresivas
drawn
y el
into the expressive
pensamiento
forms
de esta
and the
artista
thinking
tan
of
poco
this
convencional,
unconventional artist,
plenamente comprometida con el arte y
who
su
is
trascendencia,
so radically
que en
committed
ella
to art and
siempre
its
es
transcendence,
experimental y siempre innovadora.
ever experimental, ever
Convertida a
innovative.
Abramovic en un símbolo de cómo la
Abramovic
creación
has become a
artística y sus
symbol
frutos
of
se
how artistic
revitalizan
creation and its fruits are
continuamente.
continually being revitalized.
Sus actuaciones son ya parte de la historia
Abramovic's
del arte contemporáneo.
performances already form part of the
Son
history of
también
contemporary
reflejo
art.
de su coherencia,
They are also
pues
a
ha sido
reflection of her
siempre fiel
integrity,
a sí misma,
as she has always been true to
representando
herself,
la grandeza de una
representing
vocación
the
profunda
significance
y
of a
auténtica.
profound, authentic vocation.
Gloria Steinem
Gloria Steinem
ha sido galardonada
has been
con el Premio de
granted
Comunicación y
the
Humanidades.
award for communication and humanities.
Durante décadas ha sido una de las
For
más
decades,
activas
she
representantes
has been
de la lucha
one of the
por los
most
derechos de
active
las
representatives of the fight for
mujeres,
women's
con la
rights,
igualdad, la justicia
with
y la
equality,
libertad
justice and
como
freedom
auténticas banderas de su
as the
compromiso.
very standards of her commitment.
Inició un camino recorrido después
She
por
forged
millones
a
de
path
mujeres.
and was subsequently followed by millions of women. She continues to be very active and very inspiring, a veritable flag bearer in the social transformation that, when it comes to women, has taken place in recent decades in the Western world. Thanks above all, to the tenacity and perseverance of so many women who have made compelling efforts to advance their collective rights. Despite the work of people like Gloria Steinem, who have no doubts regarding the equal rights of all human beings, of all persons, we continue to endure situations and conflicts that, day after day, jeopardize all that has been achieved and question the legitimacy of principles that are inalienable: violence, discrimination, the lack of opportunities, and in short, regression towards situations that seem to have been resolved are clear evidence of all this. And that is why the commitment of women like our laureates continues to be crucial for the construction of a world that is more just and in harmony.
Como sigue siendo también imprescindible que escuchemos la voz de organizaciones
Likewise,
como Camfed,
it is crucial for us to listen to the voice of organizations such as Camfed, the Campaign for Female Education, which has received the Award for International Cooperation.
Las reivindicaciones y principios sobre la educación en igualdad.
The organization's origins and raison d'être are to be found in the demand for equity in education and its underlying principles. The African girls and women that this organization supports live in such unjust circumstances simply because of their gender. They are denied the right to knowledge, to learning, and are consequently denied the possibility of a future, of a decent life. And as a result, their fundamental rights are irrationally violated. The courageous work of Camfed is, in this sense, crucial for millions of girls and women, as well as for many boys in these countries who are condemned to an existence marked by inequality, marginalization, and poverty. In this way, Camfed further manages to create a network of intergenerational solidarity, as it is those women who have received help who in turn mentor the girls, providing therefore continuous support from childhood throughout to adult life. Camfed fights to remedy injustice, making equity, education, and sustainability a reality, ultimately leading to the possibility of a future without discrimination or contempt.
El economista y filósofo Amartya Sen, Premio de Ciencias Sociales, conoce bien.
The economist and philosopher Amartya Sen, who has received the Award for Social Sciences, is more than familiar with what inequalities between human beings entail. He has reflected for decades on the roots of poverty and the imbalances that make it so difficult to achieve general well-being, the equitable distribution of property, solidarity, and concord. His research into the standard of living, famine, social injustice, and the lack of development has led to important analysis, by means of which he has undoubtedly contributed to the fostering of justice and freedom. Amartya Sen's thinking and theories have thus influenced public policies against extreme inequality drawn up by various international organizations. From here, we greet, although he cannot be here today with us, we greet and recognize him with admiration. We really regret that he couldn't enjoy this day with us. The award for sports has been conferred on swimmer Teresa Perales. Today we also congratulate her for her latest medal, which she won in Tokyo last August, her 27th today. We also want to congratulate all our Olympians and Paralympians from the last Games. Thank you for representing us so commendably. Teresa Perales is truly extraordinary. She is hardworking, courageous, and admirable. Her tenacity and continuous striving for victory are a paradigm of what it really means to dedicate your life to competitive sports. A spirit that is vehement yet supportive, ambitious yet generous. A spirit that sport symbolizes when practiced with dedication, intensity, and excellence. a source of pride for Spain and a true example of self-improvement, triumphing over all her difficulties, injuries and illness, always with self-confidence and tremendous willpower. She is also an example for millions of people and families who see that it is truly possible for people with disabilities to be included both socially and in the workplace. This inclusion is much more than a mere concept and legitimate aspiration. Thanks to the attitude and effort of people like her, it becomes a hopeful reality. Teresa Perales is one of Spain's most outstanding sports personalities. And by her leave today, we would like to consider this an achievement of our own to a certain extent. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for your dedication and enthusiasm. Emmanuel Carrère, our laureate for literature, asserts that writing is like groping forward. The truth is that he writes to delve deep into what he and others have experienced. To describe, portray, he would say, characters that are always intense, tormented lives, until he manages to shine some light on facts and circumstances that give shape to a dense oeuvre which reflects on a disquieting world. A world that Carrère dissects, a world that produces all kinds of emotions in each and every reader. The author of what he likes to call documentary novels, Carrère is also a film and television producer, director, and screenwriter, engaged in and committed to the act of describing the human condition, of accompanying the characters he portrays through their complex existence, in order to thus offer them the possibility of expressing themselves and making themselves known. It is impossible to remain indifferent to the variety of feelings that his work offers us. At times with humor, at others with irony, his always suggestive and effective style of prose seems to follow the sound advice that you have to write about what you want to write about, because that is how you write about the truth, with the truth. Carrère is undoubtedly a master of the written word. Last year, science gave us one of the greatest joys with the creation of vaccines against COVID-19, a historic event that today we recognize with the award for technical and scientific research to the 7 scientists who have led the research and development of these vaccines. Kathleen Caricot, Drew Weissman, Philippe Faulkner, Ugur Sahin, Özlem Türeci, Derek Rossi, and Sarah Gilbert. In an incredibly short period of time, these scientists have all pooled their knowledge and the end result of the years of intense work at the service of humankind, following different strategies, but with a common goal. They have obtained vaccines that constitute the best hope to defeat the virus. We are now more aware than ever of their efforts, their tenacity, and their great ability to lead their different teams. Our admiration and gratitude is immense. We are also now more aware than ever, after the last few months, of the essential backing that basic science, scientific research needs. Today, on presenting the award to these distinguished researchers, we wish to insist on this, because as I affirmed last year, when presenting the award to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, it is our moral duty to demand and support the maximum scientific rigor and transparency in order to bolster the broadest possible confidence in this field that is so decisive for the health and balanced and fair development of humanity. And we're also more aware of the unjust circumstances of so many people in the world who do not have access to all these benefits. Vaccination against COVID-19 must reach the last corner of the planet.
La lección tan duramente aprendida en la lucha contra este virus debe servirnos.
We have learned the hard way that the fight against threats such as that posed by the virus must serve us for us to work together to achieve worldwide vaccination. A laureate for Concord, José Andrés, together with his NGO, World Central Kitchen, is more than familiar with the humanitarian emergency situations that human beings can suffer, and to which he tries to give a rapid and effective response. A response, moreover, that is altruistic and generous, for which he is recognized throughout the world, as well, of course, in our country, and also most especially in his hometown, Mieres, only too familiar with the significance of fraternity and companionship. The greatness of spirit of people who, like José Andrés, live their lives concerned about the welfare of others, regardless of the difficulties they may encounter on the way, or the obstacles they have to overcome to bring relief, consolation and help wherever they are needed, is truly admirable. For this reason, here today we wish to highlight and recognize all the merits of a deeply committed and tremendously supportive person, brimming with immense kindness and the capacity to do good. The work of José Andrés and World Central Kitchen is titanic. The ongoing, swift and efficient response to the most extreme situations has made them symbols of what it really means to show solidarity towards those who suffer, to help those in need, to collaborate with those who can provide solutions to the greatest misfortunes, there where a longer table is needed, as he doesn't he's never tired to tell us something he never actually ceases to speak of, and we find José Andrés and the World Central Kitchen there, something that is both truly moving and exemplary. Dear laureates, ladies and gentlemen, last year we expressed our deep regret that this theatre was closed. But I then affirmed that we would return to where on so many occasions since 1891 we have felt deep emotion, where we have learned so much from words, feelings and works brimming with humanity, excellence and exemplarity. Fortunately, today we have returned to the Campoamor Theatre, to our customary venue, to the memories that span 40 years, to our finest heritage and history. We are thrilled to recover this solemn, grand, but also at the same time welcoming and inspiring setting. We are still aware that complying with existing public health guidelines does not exclude people or places. But returning here truly means a lot. It means getting back on track. We have lived through circumstances that until recently were unknown to us all. The changes that are affecting the world are occurring much faster. I dare say that our own ability as human beings to accept, to understand and to assimilate them. They are changes that transform societies, give rise to imbalances and generate tensions. The momentum of today's world leads us to a scenario in which ever more spheres of our lives are becoming globalized, in which we now share common risks and challenges with other human beings. A scenario in which we also become increasingly interdependent. A scenario, in short, in which no one can set themselves apart or tread a solitary path. Faced with all these changes, we cannot waver. Giving up is not an option, as health workers told us in the worst moments of the pandemic. Faltering or conforming is not an alternative. We have to forge ahead. The pandemic has taught us valuable lessons. It made us feel vulnerable and aware of how difficult it is to achieve well-being, and yet how easy it can be to lose it. It served to reaffirm the advantages of working together. It served for us to understand that only by working together for the common good is it possible to face the most difficult situations and emerge victorious from them. At the same time, Spain was awash with both big and small feats on the part of thousands of its citizens. They demonstrated that gratitude, a commitment to others, a sense of public spirit, service to the community and loyalty to our country constitute the basic pillars of a society capable of overcoming obstacles. Of a society in which, if we are impervious to the suffering of others, we shall endure our pain alone. This crisis has made us recognize Spain as a society that is strong, responsible, mature and supportive. A society with a great capacity for improvement, and this is something that we should be proud of. But it is not enough. In these decisive moments in terms of our future, we need serenity and composure to forge firmly ahead. On this path that we symbolically tread once again here today at the Campoamor Theatre, we cannot forget our roots, our benchmarks, the road that we have already traveled as a society, and of course, the foundations of our coexistence in peace and freedom. Since the inception of our foundation, we have conveyed a message of hope year after year at this award ceremony. And today, in Oviedo, we come together once again to reaffirm that message, which is also a message of will and determination. Indeed, it is hope that moves us. For in these hours of serenity that our awards represent, we wish to recognize and extol everything that aids, consoles, comforts, and gives us strength to forge ahead. Our laureates have always stood as an example of steadfastness and determination. An example of how their causes show the greatest commitment that human beings can make, commitment towards others. We have heard and learned from them how public-spirited convictions and ethical principles strengthen, unite and define the societies that assume them as their own. How the values inherent to every human being, life, dignity, equality and freedom, must constitute a heritage of universal scope. They have warned us of the frailty of democratic values, which are not to be taken for granted. Their vigor and validity of which must be firmly, permanently, constantly and consciously defended. They have warned us that a strong, secure and better future depends on responsibility, on the fulfillment of the duty that corresponds to each and every one of us, on solidarity, and on our unity. So we must confidently forge ahead along the unwavering path of values and principles that make a society great, and that year after year our laureates share with us and conveys to us. I firmly believe that if we do so, we will be successful. No matter how difficult the challenges we may encounter along the way, we shall overcome them. Ladies and gentlemen, during the past few months, the Queen and I, along with our daughters, have known and shared sorrow and concern with all Spaniards. But we have also shared and felt the hope and the will to live of thousands of people who continue to give us the strength to be able to express our feelings once again without fear, to return to that time when we could embrace each other, shake hands, approach one another, and talk to and accompany our friends. That gaze in which health workers try to find the strength and courage to carry on, that ever so encouraging gaze within which dwelt courage, affection, and gratitude. That must remain with us. Thank you very much.
Con la venia de sus majestades, hacen su salida los excelentísimos señoras y señores galardonados con los premios Princesa de Asturias 2021.
Having finished this event of the Princess of Asturias Awards 2021, I therefore hold the 2022 awards. Thank you very much.